Hey, everybody, welcome to another great episode of Catholic Laughter. I'm Carl Kozlowski.
I'm Scott Vinci. Thanks for joining us, you guys. Carl, what's on the docket? What do we got going on right now?
Well, I just want to remind people that, we do clean stand-up comedy shows that we perform all over the country with a Catholic twist. But here on the podcast, we've got an amazing interview today and a couple of really interesting stories. So right off the bat, I want to talk about Nick Cannon. He's the TV host for The Masked Singer, and he used to be on America's Got Talent. And before that, he was a singer. And anyways, he revealed the past couple of weeks on a radio show that he has 12 kids and he spends $200,000 a year on taking them to Disneyland. I mean, wow.
That he's worth a lot. You can tell, like, if he has the time to take them to Disneyland and afford all that, he can afford many things. So good on Nick Cannon. Way to be a I would say that's a pretty good dad, wouldn't you? Like, I would love to go to Disneyland.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, because on the one other hand, we got to think, for a typical family of four, it's at least 50,000 though. So it's very understandable how that happens.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah,
You know, I
but
was I actually did some math, Carl. If it cost him 200,000 to take 12 kids to Disneyland, you know, insurance for one kid is like anywhere between 16,000 and 26,000. Let's say one kid is 26,000. That's 312,000 a year for all the kids for health insurance.
and
So
Disneyland costs two-thirds of that.
that's
Amazing.
crazy. Yes. Nick
Yeah,
is he's an amazing earner. Let's put it that way.
yeah, definitely in the top 1%. But
Yeah.
I think that God said, God said, hey, be fruitful and multiply. But I mean, he'd even say this is ridiculous. But it's nice to see a devoted father. But Nick, put a ring on it. Come on.
That's funny. Or six rings on him. I think he has six women that have the children with him, which
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty awesome
Yeah.
though. I mean, you
So
know,
watch out, any lady that gets involved with him. You're going to have two kids, and then he's going to disappear. So, you know, anyways, I think it's a pattern.
well, I did ask my home AI computer companion box how much Nick Cannon was worth, and she said he was worth 50 million. So I think Nick's doing all right for himself. He can afford big family fun.
Well, yeah, that'd only be 250 years of Disney trips. So yeah, I think he's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
But but I recall Eddie Murphy having a lot, right?
Eddie Murphy has 11 kids, so
Really?
maybe they're in some kind of contest. Who knows? You know?
I mean, it's like, yeah, I think they're trying to be the next Walton family, from the old 70s show.
Yeah, I remember that.
Except it's going to be a lot different with Nick because he names his kids really unusual names. I'm going to list them all because they're so amazing. He has Halo Marie, Lanisha. Oh wait, no, Halo Marie, Onyx Ice Cube. That's Onyx Ice Cole. That's a girl. Then he has a daughter named Zeppelin and twin boys named Zion and Zillion. And Zillion's middle name is Air, Heir. So he's known as Zillionaire.
Oh
And then
wow.
he has two daughters named Monroe and Moroccan with Mariah Carey, who he did marry. And then he also has Golden and Rise, a daughter named Powerful, and a son named Legendary Love. So that's going to be hard if you have to do the Waltons, like, good night, John Boy, good night. With him, it'd be like, good night, Powerful, good night, Zeppelin. That gets, oh, hell, forget about the rest of y'all. We're done. Good night.
Good night. Yeah. Well,
But yeah.
he's creating an empire, a canon empire when these kids get older. They're gonna rule the world.
Well, I guess the names have to be unique so you can remember them all because, he's like the opposite of that famous boxer, George Foreman, who also had a ton of kids. And he
Uh-huh.
named them all George or Georgina and then put numbers behind their names to tell them apart. Like he literally named his sons George 1, George 2, George 3. It's like, really? So at least Nick's
Well,
creative.
You know, if Bill Gates had a bunch of kids and named them all Bills, it'd be Bill 1.0, Bill 2.0, Bill 3.0.
Yeah. But I want to say, on the positive side, well, that's positive that he's having a lot of kids, but not exactly in the marital Catholic kind of way. But what's interesting is that Nick's mom was a 17-year-old who got pregnant with him unexpectedly, and she went into an abortion clinic to abort him. But then suddenly it felt wrong to her, and she ran out of the clinic and had him. And so he's actually grown up his whole life very passionately pro life. And he wrote a big song about it back in 2005 called Can I Live? And the music industry turned on him because of his pro life views. He says they wanted him to do all the usual gangster stuff or booty call songs and all that stuff. And he did that. And that's how he wound up in television instead of the music industry, he says, because they all decided to turn against him.
Hmm.
But and the last thing I want to say is he also his dad said that Nick believes in that he taught Nick how to have as many kids as you can, as long as you pay for and care for them. So while it's not exactly Catholic style, it's nice to see an outspoken pro-lifer in the entertainment industry. So kudos to Nick
Yeah, kudos to Nick's dad and Nick and he's
and
doing it.
Zillion and Zara,
Yeah,
all of them. Yeah,
yeah, he's making it happen.
yeah. Well, so
Well, you
I
know
guess
what's
it's
next, Carl?
what?
It's time for
Saints Corner.
and today's saint, if you can see the video in our podcast, you guessed it. It's Saint Nicholas. Am I right?
Ho ho ho!
Carl's got a costume on for those of you listening on the podcast only headphones. All right. So today's saint is Saint Nicholas. He's the patron saint of sailors, merchants, archers, repentant thieves, children,
Oh my!
brewers. I know, pawnbrokers, unmarried people, and students in various cities and countries around Europe. I don't know where that last part came from, but
Yeah, well, the kids in Luxembourg need somebody to pray to, so
yeah, that's
that
true.
and Liechtenstein, they're very alone in Liechtenstein, so they really need the extra help from Saint Nick to get to God.
Yeah.
So
um, you know, well, sailors, merchants, and archers. I mean, that sounds like pirates if you put them all together, doesn't it? Archers, merchants, and sailors. But
yeah,
he,
I'm just doing Santa Pirate, folks. Just bear with me. They can all be gems.
so Saint Nicholas was also known for his secret gift giving. He used to leave coins in shoes. Isn't that what you told me too?
Yeah, I mean, in my family, when we celebrated Saint Nick, it was like I'm in a Polish family, Kozlowski, and
Hmm.
or Kozlowski, and my in Poland, for some reason, or they keep Christmas Eve and Christmas purely about Jesus, and they don't even have Santa, which made my childhood weird. But we
Hmm.
would celebrate on Saint Nicholas Day. We would get a bunch of chocolate, but we did get presents. But it was all about Jesus, though. So he did the coins in the people's shoes, and so I'm surprised that I don't know. What did you think about the coins in the shoes, Scott?
I do that on the regular. I put coins in my own shoes just so I can pay for the parking meter half the time. I'm
Yeah,
like,
well,
oh, go
well, it's
ahead.
like it depends how many coins you put in people's shoes. Because put a little too many, it makes it hard to walk. I mean, that's kind of annoying.
Yeah, and it sounds kind of loud too. I usually
Yeah.
just walk with $10 bills in my shoes. It makes me feel rich.
Yeah, I bet waitresses appreciate the tips that are all sweaty from that. But
Yeah. By
um,
by the way, I wonder who thought of St. Nicholas's fashion choice. Was like this his choice? Like, hey, I'll wear some red stuff that looks like pajamas, but it's really comfortable and it'll
it's
go
really
on
hot and
forever.
itchy, is what it is. Okay, I mean this beard. Well, I guess he grew it, so yeah,
But it looks good on you. Maybe you should think when you get to your 70s and 80s, maybe you should really grow that beard that long. Your
yeah,
own.
and yeah, hopefully that's a long way off. But Yeah. Well, anyways, but the idea of Santa Claus spun off from Saint Nick because it was evolved from Dutch traditions regarding Saint Nicholas, and they called him Sinterklaas, and the Santa figure in Dutch culture. So when the Dutch established the colony of New Amsterdam here, they brought the legend and traditions of Sinterklaas with them. To me, Sinterklaas, that sounds sinister. You know, I'm getting it confused with Krampus. Nobody wants that.
To me, it sounds like a grammatical error. Like on the page, it's like, oh, I forgot to put my Sinterklaas in parenthesis,
I
or I
keep
need some
picturing,
quotations around my Sinterklaas.
Doctor, I think I pulled my Sinterklaas. I need help. But also reminds me of the whole Dutch thing and pointing it out that it's Sinterklaas officially. That reminds me of Dwight Schrute on The Office, always pointing out weird things about Dutch sayings.
Uh,
So
uh,
yeah,
that's
but
funny.
he
Well,
also his in the Eastern Orthodox Church, another branch of us Catholics, the Saint Nicholas's memory is celebrated on almost every Thursday of the year. So I mean, man, does that mean we're supposed to get gifts every Thursday? Because I've been ripped off.
yeah, or if you have to give them every Thursday, that can get quite expensive.
Yeah, it's like Nick Cannon money there, man. I'll tell you what.
Well, also, they said he's known, Saint Nicholas is known as the great gift giver, and
Really?
there's also, I don't know if you know this, Carl, but Saint Neiman Marcus is also known as the great regift giver. Uh, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really beloved saint for the ladies who love to shop. Patron saint of shopping, no doubt.
yeah.
But the thing is that his holiday or holy day is on or feast day is on December 6th.
Hmm.
So they say for those who still observe the Julian calendar, the celebration currently takes place 13 days later than it happens in the Gregorian calendar and the revised Julian calendar. I mean, come on, church, pick a calendar already. You've had 2,000 years to decide.
I know. That's funny.
But yeah, so I guess time to talk about our guests.
Yes.
So
Well, that's, Carl, that is the end of.
Saints Corner.
All right, Carl, let's talk about this week's guest. Why don't you tell our loving audience who's coming on the show soon?
yeah, well, very excited. This time we don't just have one comic, we've got two, a
Two for the
dynamic
price of
duo.
one.
Yeah, and it's quite an interesting pair. Bear with me as I explain the first one because you'll understand in a second the whole connection. But our first guest, one of them is named Azhar Usman, and he was named by CNN as America's funniest Muslim. Like they actually picked him even over Dave Chappelle, who he tours with. And so he's also been a staff writer, co-executive producer of two critically acclaimed original comedy series, Rami on Hulu and Mo on Netflix. And he also appears on screen as Najaf the Euro King, a recurring role in the historic Ms. Marvel on Disney Plus. And so, very excited to have him on board. But you might be wondering, why are we having a Muslim act on a Catholic laughter show?
Yeah,
Well, it's
why are we, Carl?
because, yeah, well, it's because his best friend and tour partner for a lot of his shows is an Iraqi Catholic, otherwise known as a Chaldean Catholic comic named Paul Elia. And we're excited to have him as well because he was been seen on dozens of television shows, including Rami, Lady Dynamite, and perhaps best known for appearing a lot of times on TBS's Conan, appearing in over a dozen sketches. So, ladies and gentlemen, we bring you Azhar and Paul. Well, hey, guys, thanks for doing the show with us. And first off, you guys are kind of a unique team in the comedy world because Azhar is a Muslim born here, and Paul, were you born in America, Paul, or elsewhere?
I was born in America, raised in Detroit.
Okay. Yeah, and so you're an Iraqi-American Catholic, otherwise known as a Chaldean. So how did you guys meet? And do you feel your backgrounds from differing faiths and ways of seeing things to some extent, does that help improve your working together?
Yeah, well, the first question, how we met through stand-up comedy. We have a lot of mutual friends. Me being, Assyrian, Iraqi, Chaldean, in the game of comedy, I just started to gravitate towards other people that are similar backgrounds, and I met Rami Youssef when pretty early on
Yeah.
when I was doing comedy, and then through the circle of Rami's an Egyptian Muslim, and I grew up in Detroit. Detroit has the highest population of Arabs in the entire country, so naturally there was always intermixing of like Muslim faith and Chaldean faith, and it's sort of been like that for a while for me. Like I would pray with my Muslim friends. I didn't do like the traditional Muslim prayer until I would say the last couple years, which I do practice as well. So yeah, I would say me and Az met through comedy, just through the vine of just the Middle Eastern comedy community.
Okay. And do you want to add anything to that, Azhar? About like, do you
Yeah,
feel
no,
how this affects your working together, having different views
sure.
like that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would just add to that, that was really wonderful to meet Paul, like you said, through mutual friends. And, I'm not Arab, I'm Indian, it's an ethnically
Oh,
Indian background.
sorry.
But no, that's all right. But I grew up Muslim, so kind of like the way that the Catholics are a minority in Iraq, the Muslims are a minority in India. So
Okay.
I had an immediate kinship with Paul, and since that time, since we first met, I've basically been attempting to convert Paul to Islam unsuccessfully for many years. So
Huh.
that's how we got to this point.
No, AZ was great. Like I basically put Islam in my cart, and then it's like continue to checkout. I put in the address, I put in the discount code, and then it's like I'm like, I'll just save it for later.
And I'm just like, yo, what's the 3-digit code on the back? What is the 3-digit code?
Yeah, I'm not putting the security code.
That's all we need to consummate this transaction.
No returns. No.
Yeah.
Hey, I have a question for you. I have a question for you, Paul. Paul, so you identify as a Chaldean Catholic. What's that? What is a Chaldean Catholic, and how is that different from the Roman Catholic like Mass? And what are the differences that you know of, or that you can assess?
Well, they're very subtle differences. Chaldeans are Catholic Assyrians from Iraq. The Assyrian community basically broke off into a few different sects, and Chaldean was a religious sect that was divided when the Assyrian church divided. The Assyrians are Christian Orthodox, and Chaldeans are Catholic Church of the Eastern Rite. So the practices are very similar to like the Roman Catholic Church. A lot of the same, basically the Catholic script of like the opening and then the blessing of the bread and then the prayers and then the Holy Communion and then the final prayer. Like the same beat sheet is the same with the Chaldean Church. So I grew up going to Catholic grade school. So when I would go to Catholic grade school and basically just attend the Roman Catholic Mass, it was very similar. Really, the only difference is that we would pray in Sudith, which is the language of the Assyrians. So we all our prayers were in Sudith, but very similar to like the Catholic Church. I mean, it is Catholic.
Well, y'all got your own pope though, right?
We don't have our own pope, but we got our own bishop.
Oh,
And I think we have a cardinal. Actually, we actually have a cardinal as well.
wow.
But I didn't saw that Chaldeans don't have like. I thought y'all had a brown pope.
No, the Pope right now, Pope Francis, he is our highest authority.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, but he doesn't answer my messages.
That guy.
He's a little busy running.
Yeah,
the whole
I DM'd him. I'm like, hey, would you mind sharing my comedy special? And nothing.
He's like, can
Yeah,
I get a
like-
selfie with Paul?
He's like, I'm already executive producing Jim Gaffigan.
Yeah, exactly. Well, how did each of you guys fall in love with comedy? Were your families funny, or did your passion for performing develop later as an adult? Hello?
I'm gonna let Paul go first.
Oh,
I was gonna let you go first.
oh.
Sure. I mean, I guess since I'm
Somebody.
older, I am older than Paul, which is weird. I feel I have this big brother kind of uncle vibe with a lot of younger comics now because I'm pushing 50. I've been doing stand up for over 20 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got into performing, really in high school, even younger than that actually. I grew up in Chicago. I was born in Chicago. My folks came to Chicago from India a couple years before I was born. And then I was raised sort of in this north side of Chicago Muslim community. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago called Skokie, Illinois,
Yeah.
and a bunch of Muslims from like the north side of the city and Skokie and Lincolnwood and 4 or 5 other kind of surrounding suburbs. There was a mosque community that I was kind of connected to, and then we started going to these summer camps, kind of the way Jewish kids would go to Jewish summer camp. There was this Muslim youth camp, and so they'd have campfire every night, and then every cabin would perform different whatever their performances was. So I would do comedy, and I was doing these comedy sketches probably was starting when I was like 10, 11 years old. And so I kind of got bit by that performance bug early. Then in high school, I did some theater and I kind of got more into it. But I never imagined doing stand up until I had a friend when I was in law school. This would have been the mid 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a amateur comic who would go perform at the open mic every week. And so once I finally got it out of him, like, where do you go every Monday night? And once he opened up to me that he would go to this open mic, I was, of course, like obsessed with like, I have to check this out. So I went and watched him do stand up. And I'll never forget that first night I ever saw open mic stand up comedy, which would have been in the fall of 1996. And that was in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis, St. Paul. The comedy club was called Acme Comedy Club. It's still there. And on that night, I got to see, they say that people are inspired by greatness and mediocrity. And I got to see like the full range of the spectrum, like just absolute trash, horrible wannabe open micers who sucked at stand up so bad that I walked out of there feeling like I can do better than that. But I also saw the opposite end of the spectrum because that night, Mitch Hedberg, rest in peace, who is one of my favorite comedians. He's from the Twin Cities. He happened to pop in that night just to work on some new material. So I got to see him and I got to see Absolute Trash. And I just remember walking out of there that night like, I have to try stand up. And it was not until a couple years later that I finally worked up the courage. But that's basically how I got into stand up comedy.
What did your parents say when you were like, hey, I want to do this. This is fun. I'm good at this.
Yeah. By the time they got wind that I was even doing stand up at all, I was already married and I had a kid on the way. So, they just, they sort of shrugged their shoulders. And, I had been a little bit of a wild child already. Like I went to law school, but during law school, I started a .com internet company and I, turned out a law firm to do my own startup. So they were already like, yeah, this guy's a little bit crazy. And so by the time, I kind of made up my mind I was going to go for it with stand up, my parents were, and that was, I didn't really quit everything else and go full time into stand up until 2005, by which point I had 2 kids and had been, I was married.
Wow.
I was a few years into my first marriage. So by that point, my parents really had nothing to say about it. It was more like, good luck. That was their attitude. Good luck.
Yeah. I see.
How about you, Paul? Like, what inspired you, and how did your family react?
I started as an actor. I mean, which I still do. Like my first professional gig, I was a stand-in for Michael Imperioli. If you are familiar with him, yeah, he plays Christopher from The Sopranos. Yeah. So I was his stand-in on a show in Detroit, and then while I was on this show, this was like my first professional acting gig. One of the actors on the show, Sean Majumder, is a Canadian comedian. And, he's since then gone global. He performs all over the world. He's, recognizable name in the game. He was doing this comedy benefit and he was just like, yo, I'm doing this comedy benefit. You should come. And I'm like, bro, I want to perform. I would love to perform at this show. And it was at the MGM Grand Casino in Detroit. I never did stand up in my life. And I was like, I want to perform. So he goes, cool, I'll give you 7 minutes. So I never performed stand up. The only stand up I did was I performed it in front of my brother, and I was like pitching him jokes I was gonna do, and he goes, "Oh, that's hilarious. Oh, that's so funny. Oh, bro, you definitely got to do that." And then he would be like, "And then after you say that, you should be like, I said, shut up." Like these were like the tags he was giving me. So I was prepared to go on stage and do a lot of these jokes, including the tag my brother gave me, which is "Big shut up." And then I show up to the venue, and there's 2,500 people there, and it was very overwhelming for me. I go on stage, my whole family plus all our friends are sitting in the front. It's like 35 deep, all Chaldeans. They've never seen stand-up comedy, really. Like the only comedy there. I mean, honestly, they were pretty intoxicated, so I think they forgot.
They are Catholic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hilarious. So yeah, so I do the show. Obviously, I didn't do well. I did very, very poorly. And then afterwards, I was like off stage beating myself up. And then my brother was like, "Why didn't you say bitch, shut up?" And then he was saying that's why the set didn't go well. So I mean, since then, I mean, I was obviously humiliated. I didn't feel like I was scared of stand up. And then when I moved to LA, I would say probably 6 months into moving to LA. This is 2011. This is in December. Got back on the horse, and I just been doing it constantly, incessantly ever since. I mean, there was a period of time from 2011 to like 2018 where I was doing stand up almost every single day and multiple times, multiple open mics. I would go to like 3 or 4 open mics a night, and I would just try different jokes. And, I experimented with different styles, and, now I'm on your podcast.
Yeah.
Well, I was just wondering about something that popped in my head, like, oh God, what it popped out of my head too. We'll cut it out. Go ahead, Scott. Sorry.
So do you like? I feel like that's a great fast track, like to do stand up every night. Like I would love to do stand up every night. Even if it's sometimes it can become a tedious job. But like, did you feel like you had like? I have to have a day job right now to keep things going. At the time, did you have a day job too, or did you just be like, I've got everything covered, I can do stand up?
I mean, I was working multiple jobs. Like I was working as a caterer. I was doing valet. I was working at a restaurant. I was working at a nightclub. I was a unlicensed massage therapist. I had several different gigs and trades that I was doing just like generate revenue. And then, eventually I would like do some gigs, and it's like, hey, $200 a show. And I'm like, well, I'm getting 200 a show. I do that show. Also, I was living extremely frugally. Is frugally a word?
Yes.
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 Yes. So I was living this lifestyle. Like when I first moved to LA, I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment that I shared with a white rapper named Scripture,
Wow.
who was an atheist.
What?
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
and I asked him, why Scripture, since you don't believe in that. And then his response was, but I spell it with a K.
What?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
SKRIP? Is that what you're saying?
TURE. Yep. You can look him up right now. He has 3 music videos that I produced and I wasn't credited on.
Mm.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
yeah. I mean, he does business like an atheist.
And well, otherwise it was good training for Hollywood, So.
Yeah, exactly, bro. Hollywood behaves. Yeah, the deals are very atheist adjacent.
Yeah. Oh, actually, here's my question that I had a second ago was that you have all these shows going on now, like that you guys have been involved with, like Rami and on Hulu and Mo on Netflix, starring other Arabic comics or Muslim or I sometimes I get the thing mixed up. I apologize, but guys, the general background of you guys. And but years ago there wasn't that kind of amount of opportunities going on. So what do you think has changed to open up the doors? And did you guys feel like it was difficult not having like strong examples of success to emulate? Azhar?
Oh,
Anyone?
well, I mean, the first thing I do want to just, I think it's important maybe to underscore this because because your podcast is, called Catholic Laughter, and it's, I assume there's a lot of Catholics that would be interested in it. I think it's kind of a significant detail just to underscore, like, Islam is a religion,
Yes.
and there's almost, they say about 1.5 billion Muslims in the world. Every color of the rainbow, of the human rainbow. The most populous Muslim country in the world is actually Indonesia, in
Oh, really?
Southeast Asia, and the Arabs comprise roughly 20% of the Muslims of the world.
Okay.
The Arabs are, a race of people, and Semites. It's funny because people will use the term anti-Semite nowadays to mean somebody who doesn't like Jewish people, which is not true. Semite is somebody who speaks a Semitic language, and Arabic is a Semitic tongue. So Arabs are actually Semites. Hebrew, Syriac, Aramaic. These are all Semitic tongues. But the Arabs are, basically a people from the Middle Eastern lands, and you may be surprised to learn that the majority of Arabs in America are actually Christians.
Huh. Okay.
So this is one of those things where these two categories often get conflated, and I think it's probably important, especially for a podcast like this, for listeners to become educated about that. Now,
Yeah.
having said that, in general, there hasn't really been a whole lot of Middle Eastern, Arab, Muslim representation in the history of Hollywood.
Yeah.
The extent to which you find it, it's pretty tropey. It's pretty one-dimensional.
Yeah.
It's Arabs as terrorists. It's Arab, brown guys as taxi drivers, or 7-Eleven owners. So you haven't really had a whole lot of Hollywood representations that have been nuanced. And so, yeah, I think we're kind of in a new era now where we're starting to see more of that emerge. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I was just to add on that, I've auditioned for so many hacky, like refugee or terrorist roles, and like I remember one of them. It was like it was one line. Basically, this guy was like talking to me. He goes, "So how you doing, sir?" And then I was like, "When they came into my village." And then they just stops there, and it's like it just goes into some other story. It's like part of like a dream sequence, and I was just playing some guy who had something happen to his village.
Do you guys feel like they go, oh, we need an accent? You guys need to put on an accent. You audition?
Yeah. All the time. Like I've auditioned for. Well, it's hilarious. Like because I've auditioned for roles, and it's like looking for an Arab male, 20s, and I'm in there with and there's Indian people there.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like the Indian people are just like, yeah, dude, I've been playing Arab for a few years now. And they're like, dude, I just perfected my Arab accent. And the thing is, like, they would have a natural, like, traditional Indian accent. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it right now. But like, they would have the traditional Indian accent, go into audition, be Arab, and then leave Indian.
I see. I had a friend. He speaks fluent Spanish, right? So he goes on his auditions, and he learned a long time ago. And this is a pro tip for my friend Dave. So he used to go in like this. He'd just sound normal because we were roommates in Texas in college, and he would go into the audition and be like, "Hey, how's it going? Do you guys need an accent?" And they're like, "Yeah. Why don't you give us a Spanish accent from Mexico? Give us a Mexican accent." He'd be like, "Okay." So then he would do the accent in the thing, and then he would leave. He would say, "Thanks a lot." Didn't book those roles. Then when he started going in, it said he needs a Mexican, the character is Mexican. He'd walk right in, and the second they said, "Hey, how's it going?" he would put on this Mexican accent. He never let it go until he walked out of there, and then he started booking more because they wanted like an authentic Mexican.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
You know what? I'm telling you another just quick acting story. Like I was a reader for auditions, and I was a reader for this Iraqi film director who was making a film about Iraq. And then the thing is, like, the Arab actors, some of them are like so bad because there's not a lot of roles for them. So the thing is, and it's usually like those like terrorist, like hacky things.
Yeah.
So this guy had to go into this audition. He was playing a guy, basically giving his children to someone else. And then so the guy, he was just like playing it so big. He was like, oh, oh. And he's like, please keep the children safe. And he's like screaming, and she goes, cut. And she goes, hey, let's do it again, but like, let's tone it down a little bit. And then he goes, but my child is going to die. And then she goes, yeah, yes, your child is going to die, but I just want to have it just a little bit more throwaway. Like, you know, like, hey, keep them safe.
Or it's your stepkid. It's not your real blood. So you don't care as much, you know? No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding, everyone.
No, that's hilarious. What a hilarious note.
Get the doctor.
Hey, I got a question back on the kind of the track I was heading on a little bit before was since you guys have traveled doing the world doing comedy, and Paul and Azhar, you guys tour a lot together, right? I believe that's what Azhar told me.
Well, we've done. I don't know. I don't want to exaggerate it, but yeah, Paul and I have definitely done a bunch of shows together. And over the years, we've done a bunch of shows together. Yes.
I was just wondering, since we're in such tense times in the world, what do you feel about the power of comedy to bring people together and just laugh with each other?
Oh, it's the best. I mean, it's what an incredible tool we have to where you can say anything you want as long as it's funny. If you can make any point you want to make, and then the judicial system is like, was it funny? Was there a point? Pass. You know, the harm is when people are like not even saying jokes, and they're just being like, you know, just having like very like just rough, disgusting takes, Michael Rappaport. So I would say, yeah.
Okay. How about you, Azhar?
Yeah, I mean, I try to be careful not to exaggerate the role of comedy. You know, it's important, sure. And to Paul's point, I mean, I will say this, you know, there's kind of an unstated rule in stand-up, which is, you know, what Paul said, you know, yes, you can say anything you want, provided it's funny. And I would add to that, you know, the more offensive a joke is, and you know, let's be honest, we're comedians. Like a comedian knows when he or she is attempting a joke. He, she, or they are attempting a joke that, you know, is going to be offensive. We know that. So it's like, okay, well, the litmus test has got to be, you know, it's got to be way funnier than it is offensive. If it's not much funnier than it is offensive, then, you know, then you're just an asshole. You're not really a good comic.
Yeah.
And if you're way funnier than you are offensive, well, then that's the art of stand-up. And if someone is still going to take offense and, you know, pick it over a joke, that's their prerogative. But, you know, they're now quibbling with the comedian. So I think that comedy has a role to play in society, but at the same time, yeah, I think that in the end of the day, you know, there's only so much that can be done through comedy and through the arts in general. I mean, we see what's happening right now, for example, in the Middle East. I mean, there's basically a genocide happening. And, you know, what can artists do about that? Not a whole lot.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Azhar, quick question. So you tour with Dave Chappelle here and there. Do you have any fun stories or insights about knowing Dave that well that you could share with us legally?
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's happened over the years. You know, I guess I would just summarize it, you know, my entire relationship with Dave. And I think a lot of people who know him would say the same thing, which is that, you know, despite being this kind of mega celebrity, and by the way, Paul is, you know, touring with and he's very close to Matt Rife, who has become, you know, really the biggest touring comedian in the world this past year. Yeah. So the same thing can be said, I think, for both these guys, which is that, you know, people I think would be surprised to learn how down to earth these guys are. You know, the nice thing about comedians is, unlike, I think, actors or musicians even, there's a much less of a tendency for a comedian to get famous and then just have it go to their ego and go to their head. Chappelle is extremely down to earth, extremely grounded. Just really a real person. He's been married for a long time. He's got 3 children that he's raised with his wife. He's just a very real person. Unlike the perception a lot of people might have that celebrities are a certain way or they're all about living a certain lifestyle or what have you. Dave is just a very down to earth, real person, and that's why I'm just infinitely grateful for that relationship in my life.
Well, I noticed that CNN, that they called you America's funniest Muslim, but then you're dealing with Dave too. So did that cause any? Was there any competition or like what was that about from him?
No, I mean, Dave knows better than anyone that those kinds of things are just media hype, and you can never take that stuff seriously. If anything, he's been very much a mentor, I would say, to me as well, and just helping me understand how to navigate show business in general and stand-up comedy in particular. So in that sense, just the idea of you can't take any of the hype seriously, whether the praise or the criticism. And you just got to kind of keep your head down, keep writing jokes, run your own race, and realize that there's only so much you can ever do. In the end of the day, there's always going to be factors that are much bigger than any of us that will kind of control and dictate the course of your life and your career. And so a lot of life is just kind of figuring out how to ride the wave.
Yeah. Gotcha. So do you guys feel a sense of faith mission in your work as a comedian or not? Does it enter do you joke about each of your belief sets a lot? And do you feel any deeper calling, like it's a vocation of some sort? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, my whole purpose in life, and this is something that, AZ and I talk about, like if you boil it down, like my purpose in life is everything I do is for God. So before I make any movements, if I make any big decisions, I ask myself, is this for God? How is this for God? Basically, I run it through the how's this for God filter. So when I'm doing material, often I'll ask myself, how is this serving God? I mean, I do talk about religion in my special that's coming out in a few weeks. And in my special, I have a whole section about God and religion and what it's like being a practicing non-Muslim.
Okay. And how about you, Azhar? Does it drive you at all?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, faith has ultimately played a huge role, in my life, in my career, in my stand-up, in my television writing. It's just kind of ended up permeating through all of my work and all of my life. So there's no doubt that remaining a faithful human being, trying very desperately in my own personal life to try to inculcate the types of values and mores that I espouse, certainly that I claim to believe in. That's just a big part of, I think, my life, and then it's certainly found its way into my work as well. So for many years I toured under a brand called Allah Made Me Funny,
Yeah.
with 2 other comedians, a Black Muslim comic, Preacher Moss, who was the creator of that tour. He invited me to work with him. I became the co-creator, and then we actually toured first with a guy called Azim Muhammad, who was another Black Muslim, but he's part of the Nation of Islam. And then subsequently, we ended up parting ways with Azim. We brought on Neil Hammer, who's a Palestinian American comedian who's, of course, well known for the show Mo on Netflix and has a couple specials out. But that project, Allah Made Me Funny, we got to tour that over the course of a decade all over the planet. And subsequently, we came to find out that in many of those countries we went to, places like Australia or New Zealand or all over the Europe and the Arab world, other people, young people, got inspired by our show And fast forward now, they've become very successful comedians in their own right, in various countries all over the planet. So it really became this very kind of a cultural moment in time, and it was framed as a post 9/11 kind of response or whatever. And I like to ignore some of that commentary, because again, that's often commentators and pundits trying to put a label on the artistic work. I would just say that I was doing stand up, by the way, before 9/11. So this idea that somehow the tour was a response to 9/11, it's like, no, I look at it more like the only difference was suddenly people cared. Suddenly there was an interest to hear what we had to say, even though we were doing stand up. Preacher Moss had been doing stand up since the 90s. So anyhow, a long story short, I mean, I'm very proud of that project, and I'm quite amazed actually that everywhere I go these days. I mean, I just did a show recently in Little Rock, Arkansas,
That's my
and
town. That's where I'm at.
yeah, that's right. That's right. You messaged
Yeah.
me while I was
Carl,
there.
don't tell people that. Okay.
But I was just there for a night, and I was shocked that people who attended the event I was at, a couple of them told me that they had heard my stand up 15 years earlier or something when they were kids, now they're grown adults. So
Wow.
yeah, it's been kind of amazing to see just the generational kind of impact of some of that work. It's been pretty cool.
And so I will wrap this up, you guys. We'll get going here, but I want to leave you with this last question. We'll start with Paul, and you guys can think about it for a second. What do you think is your funniest moment from performing stand-up comedy, whether it was like recently or a while ago? I can give you an example of one of mine, just if you're looking for one. But years ago, me and a buddy, we used to go to open mics so much. We knew each other's act, and he was like a little overweight, and so I would do his. One night we said, "Hey, why don't I do all your jokes and you do all my jokes?" And that was like one of the funniest moments in my life. Like, I still remember that night. I was dying at him up there doing my jokes, and he was dying at me when I was up there doing his jokes. We just did it at an open mic, and I never forgot it. You guys have any moments like that? Like either like recently, someone in the audience or something you guys said went another way, or if you can think.
Man, it's hilarious you were saying that, because I was thinking about this the other day. Like my first ever comedy show that I did, like the one that I did in Detroit, it was I didn't get a lot of laughs at all. And there was a moment where the thing is, I was hitting my punchlines with so much and here's the thing, and I would hold for laughs, and there was none. So it's a 2,500 seat theater. And then I can't remember what joke I said. I said something like, and then that happened. And then I was quiet. And then I heard someone all the way in the back that he was just like, man, what? It's very faintly. Then I was quiet. And then he was like, man, this dude sucked. and then I said my next joke. And then during that same low moment of nothing, this guy was like, you have my valet ticket?
Oh my God.
So I was like, the thing is it probably was 100 yards. No, not 100, maybe 50 yards from myself where the back of the audience was. Right. And I can hear him losing his valet ticket.
That's funny.
Wow. How about you, Azhar?
A funny moment.
Top that, AZ.
Yeah, top that.
I got 3 laughs.
Yeah. I mean,
it's the same story.
You're looking for a funny thing that happened that was not on stage, basically.
No, actually on stage, like in their comedy career.
Gosh.
Or tell us a story off if you have a better one for that.
Well, I'll tell you this story, which I would say is, it's probably not exactly answering your question, Scott, but it's a very memorable kind of moment from my career. I was probably about 7 or 8 years into my stand-up career at the time, and Russell Peters invited me to tour with him. Yeah. And I was on the fence about it because my, at the time, wife, now ex-wife, was due to deliver our 4th son around that time. So anyway, I bit the bullet and I decided I was going to go on this tour. I, of course, missed the birth of the baby, which was bad. And in any case, he then gets really sick. So now I get the sick baby who was delivered early, who's in the hospital, and I'm on tour supposed to be doing jokes with Russell Peters. And I tell you what, man, nothing like a tragedy back at home to just make you destroy on stage. So I was just ripping it so hard in Dubai. 4,000 people, 5,000 people.
Wow.
People are dying laughing. And I'm just having like the best sets of my life immediately coming off stage and just like, going to my hotel room and just basically crying and worried about this baby and trying to figure out how I can get home on the next flight. And so, anyhow, long story short, I'm in the middle of this crazy life situation where my personal life could not have been more turbulent. And yet on stage, I'm just destroying. And lo and behold, Russell says, what are you doing tonight? Can you come to my hotel room? And I said, sure. So I go to his room, and he, of course, I had apprised him and his whole team of like what was going on with my baby back at home. And so he sits me down and he gives me like simultaneously some of the most heartbreaking, but also heartwarming news of my career. He's like, the heartbreaking part was, hey man, listen, I'm never going to bring you on tour with me ever again. And the heartwarming part was, he said, because you're not an opener, man, you're a headliner. And, he told me straight up, he said, I couldn't follow you tonight. And, that's just the truth. Now, in his defense, he had just burned an hour of material. So he had just recorded something. So he was kind of building new material. He didn't really have a strong act at the time. He was kind of building it in front, when you have the luxury of that type of hot hand, he could go up in front of 5,000 people with no material and still destroy. But here I was, coming in with my polished 20 minutes that I had built over the last 8 years. So I was just blowing him out of the water. And so he said to me, yeah, you're not an opener. I'm not going to have you open for me anymore. I'm sorry. But the good news is like, yeah, you're going to be just fine, man. Just keep your head down. I remember he told me, keep your head down, keep working. The way this game works is at some point you get your turn on the ride. It's like you consider yourself in line at Six Flags. And one day when your turn comes, you get on the ride and you fly around the world and you collect bags of money. And so just be patient. Your time is coming. And that really fueled me for many years. That was a great compliment and very memorable moment of my career. And then the good news, the happy ending is I did end up flying back shortly thereafter. And thankfully, that son is now 15 years old, doing just fine. Doing just fine.
Awesome.
Man, that is way better than my story. Let me say, bro, I feel like when I said my story, I heard, man, what?
That's funny.
That son is going to grow up to become a valet driver.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right, Carl, you want to take us out?
Yeah. So, guys, where can people, find you online and your socials? And if you each want to plug like a latest special or anything, we'd love to hear about it.
Yo, Paul Elia, Elia. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all the social medias. And I have my comedy special coming out called Detroit Player on Mint Comedy on Christmas Eve. Check it out.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Great.
Perfect.
Very cool. I'm not sure when this podcast is going to drop.
Christmas week.
Oh, it is. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll have my new website launched just yet. I am working on it. Next year, 2024, you could find me on the internet at az.tv. But before then, I do still have my own website. It's azhar.com, A-Z as in zebra, H-A-R, azhar.com. All my social media links are there. Very excited about Paul's special coming out, Detroit Player, which I was very lucky to be a producer on. And
Nice.
Sometime in 2024, Paul has directed my stand-up film, which we are in post-production on right now. And hopefully that'll be coming soon in 2024. You can be on the lookout for that. Thank you.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thanks for taking the time, guys. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, fellas.
Thank you so
See
much.
y'all.
Yeah.
All right.
Shout
All
out
right,
to
take
Catholic
care.
Crafter.
Thanks.
Thanks. All right. See you later. Thanks.
Peace.
The final word.
Hello, this is Father Brannon Leppa, a priest of the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City, and I have been invited to ponder with you a question raised in the book Ask the Bible Geek by Mark Hart. If God doesn't sleep, why does he need a day of rest? Perhaps, like many of you now hearing this Catholic riddle, I was not prepared to rush into a hasty answer and fall off the theological balance beam just yet. By providence, I was staying at a Cistercian monastery in Aptos, California, catching up on some well-needed rest. So I had time to ponder the puzzle of God's rest and what it means for us while joining in the hours of prayer and work at the monastery. Being a guest, the monks, who keep a lot of livestock, wouldn't let me work very much, but I watched two rams, voracious in their pursuit of a low tree branch, scramble over their fence into a duck pen. These two prodigal rams caused a lot of problems for the monk who tried to shoo them back into their pasture without injury to goat, monk, or duck. One ram was stuck and just couldn't understand how to get back home. The monk, who had to feed the sheep, goats, ducks, pigs, dogs, and guests, finally left the goat there among the geese and walked away, exhausted. Maybe that was it. Maybe God saw Adam and Eve making a mess of things, threw up his hands and said, "I quit with you people, you're impossible." And then he went to a nice spa resort and spent the first Sabbath recovering from that stubborn creature, humanity. Maybe not. God doesn't get tired. So I decided to ask the head monk of the community for help. He closed his eyes and smiled and said, God rested in the thing he loved, his creation. It was the rest of delight. He rested to give us an example that we do need rest to be where he is always. God's rest is the perfection of action, the unity of a simple, loving tranquility.
Hey everybody, this is Carl Kozlowski, and I'm just letting you know that if you're looking for a last-minute, clean and funny stocking stuffer, pick up my book, Dozed and Confused, Tales from a Nutty Narcoleptic Life, on Amazon. I won the title of America's Funniest Reporter in a National Laugh Factory contest, and this book is a collection of 30 of my funniest articles and essays from my 25-year career as a reporter at some of America's biggest media outlets. So enjoy Christmas and have some laughs on me, but go find the book at Amazon.com. Thank you. God bless.
CatholicLaughter.com brings live stand-up comedy shows to your church, fundraiser, or event. For more information or to inquire, go to CatholicLaughter.com and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram.